Hold up, Browns fans, something just shifted in Cleveland that nobody's talking about, and it's going to change everything you think you know about this team's direction. While everyone's obsessing over who's throwing passes in practice, the real story is happening in the front office right now, and it's painting a picture of a franchise that's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Joe Flacco just locked down the Week 1 starting spot, but here's what's wild. That's not even close to being the most important news coming out of Berea. The Browns just made moves that tell us exactly where Kevin Stefanski's head is at, and trust me, it's not where you think it is. They cut Tony Brown free and Nick Needham, two veteran defensive backs who had legitimate NFL experience, and the timing of these releases is absolutely fascinating. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just typical roster trimming, let me paint you the real picture here. Tony Brown 3 wasn't just some camp body. This guy had been around the block with Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis before landing in Cleveland. In his 6 games with the Browns last season, he wasn't setting the world on fire, but he forced a fumble and showed he belonged on an NFL field. Nick Needham? Even more intriguing. 6 seasons with Miami, started as a rookie after going undrafted, and was a legitimate contributor in their secondary for years. So why are the Browns cutting guys with proven track records when they're supposedly in rebuild mode? Because they're not rebuilding the way you think they are. They're being surgical about it. When you've got Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome 3 holding down your cornerback spots, and Grant Delpit and Ronnie Hickman developing into your safety tandem of the future, you don't need veteran placeholders taking up roster spots. You need hungry players who fit your timeline. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about the secondary. This is about a franchise that's finally learned from its mistakes. For years, Cleveland has been the team that kept veterans around just because they were veterans, the team that prioritized experience over potential, the team that never seemed to have a clear vision of what they were building toward. These cuts tell us that era is officially over. The quarterback situation is the perfect example of this new philosophy in action. Yeah, Flacco's your Week 1 starter, but he's essentially a bridge quarterback while Kenny Pickett, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and whoever else emerges battle out for the future. The Browns aren't panicking about not having their franchise quarterback yet. They're being patient, they're being smart, and they're setting themselves up to make the right decision when the time comes. And speaking of the right decisions, let's talk about what these roster moves really mean for the AFC North. Cincinnati's got Joe Burrow slinging the ball around, Baltimore's retooled their entire operation to be even scarier, and Pittsburgh's doing whatever Pittsburgh does to stay competitive. Cleveland's response: they're not trying to match anybody else's timeline. They're creating their own. Myles Garrett anchoring that defensive line, a secondary that's young and talented, and an offensive line that's being built to protect whoever ends up being their long-term answer at quarterback. This is what sustainable team building looks like. The Browns aren't trying to win a championship this year by throwing money at aging veterans. They're trying to build something that can compete for championships for the next 5 to 7 years. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Great, another rebuilding year in Cleveland. But that's where you're wrong. This isn't a rebuilding year in the traditional sense. This is a foundation year. The Browns have pieces in place that most rebuilding teams would kill for. Their defense is already good enough to keep them in games, and if their offensive line can give their quarterback, whoever that ends up being, enough time to operate, they're going to surprise people. The beauty of what Cleveland's doing right now is that they're not putting artificial pressure on themselves. They're not saying we have to win the division this year, or we're failures. They're saying we're going to build this thing the right way, and when we're ready to make our move, we're going to be dangerous for a long time. Those veteran cuts? They're sending a message to everyone in that locker room that your resume doesn't matter, your age doesn't matter, what you did last year doesn't matter. What matters is, can you help us win games in 2024 and beyond? Can you execute what we're trying to do schematically? Can you grow with this team as it develops its identity? And here's the thing that's got me really excited about what the Browns are doing. They're not afraid to make the hard decisions. Cutting Tony Brown free and Nick Needham wasn't easy. These are guys who had relationships in the building, who knew the system, who could have provided depth if injuries hit. But Cleveland looked at their roster and said, we'd rather give those snaps to younger players who might surprise us, who might develop into something special. That's championship-level thinking right there. That's the kind of organizational philosophy that separates teams that get lucky for a year or two from teams that sustain excellence. The Browns are betting on their ability to develop talent, they're betting on their coaching staff's ability to maximize potential, and they're betting on their front office's ability to identify the right kinds of players. So while everyone else is panicking about Cleveland not having a franchise quarterback locked up, I'm looking at these roster moves and seeing a team that knows exactly what it's doing. They're creating competition at every position, they're prioritizing upside over safety, and they're building something that's going to be a problem for the rest of the AFC North sooner than people realize. The Browns aren't trying to convince you they're ready to compete for a championship right now. They're showing you they're building something that's going to be ready to compete for championships for years to come. And honestly, that's so much more exciting than throwing a bunch of money at aging veterans and hoping for magic. If you're seeing the vision here and you want to stay locked in on everything happening with this team, make sure you're subscribed to Browns Breakout, because we're going to be breaking down every move, every decision, and every development as this franchise continues to build towards something special. Hit that notification bell too, because in a division as competitive as the AFC North, things change fast, and you're going to want to know about it first. The 53-man roster deadline just passed, but Cleveland's work is far from over. They're going to be watching the waiver wire, they're going to be evaluating guys other teams cut, and they're going to continue making moves that prioritize the long-term vision over short-term comfort. This is what smart organizations do, and for the first time in a long time, Cleveland looks like a smart organization that knows where it's headed.